Hello and welcome back to the Aqua Pod. I'm your host Charlie, and on this episode we bring you something slightly different. The first of 2 episodes recorded live at our 10-year Learn to Swim celebration event at Dynamic Earth in Edinburgh. The first of these episodes was recorded with 3 CEOs from the past 10 years at Scottish Swimming. Forbes Dunlop, who was the CEO at the time of launch of the National Learn to Swim framework, Euan Lowe, who was Chief Executive up until last year, and the current CEO of Scottish Swimming, John Lunn. We spoke about the last 10 years of the framework, including challenges, highlights, and what is to come next. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy a slightly different episode today.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie, the host of the Aqua Pod, which is the Scottish Swimming podcast. Hopefully there's a few fans in the audience. Nice one. Little bit low in numbers there, but hopefully by the end of the day there'll be a few more as well. We've got a few interesting panel discussions coming up today, the first of which is with 3 CEOs from the past 10 years at Scottish Swimming. We're going to be talking over the past 10 years of the national framework. Got Forbes Dunlop, who's the current CEO at Sport Scotland and was the CEO at the time of the launch of the national framework. We have Euan Lowe, who was obviously the chief executive up until last year, so oversaw a lot of the development of the framework as well. And we also have our current CEO, John Lunn, as well. You will have seen all 3 speaking earlier on in our celebration video, so we'll be chatting a little bit about some of the things that popped up in that as well. And we'll also be talking about some other bits and pieces and looking ahead to the future as well. So without further ado, if you could join me in welcoming up onto the stage Forbes, Euan and John as well. So thanks very much for joining me up on stage. I'm going to start with you, Forbes, obviously in order as we say. Obviously you were there at the very beginning of the national framework. What was the kind of initial drive and idea and force behind the framework?
Afternoon, everyone. Before I answer the question, I just wanted to take a moment, just in case I don't get the chance, to thank everyone and congratulate everyone on what we've just seen there. Some of those stats and that progression over the last 10 years are fantastic. And in true CEO style, I get to sit up here and talk about it, and actually all the work and all the progress has been done by the providers out there, you, your organisations and your teams of people. So well done, brilliant work, and thank you very much for that. The early vision, I started at Scottish Swimming in 2013, and Maureen Campbell was the chair. Maureen's in the rooms now my chair at Sport Scotland, so it's great to keep that partnership going. But I remember when I started in 2013, and Maureen said there's 2 things you have to do in the next year. The Commonwealth Games is clearly next year, so make sure you do everything you possibly can to support the athletes, the coaches and the clubs to do their very, very best next year at the Commonwealth Games. So that was a very clear direction. That was task 1. Task 2 was to go and consult about the strategy for Scottish Swimming going forward. So I spent 2013 and then into 2014 speaking to our clubs, our districts and all our partners, all the providers that are here, and asked them what's important, what's really important, what do you want Scottish Swimming to focus on and what do you want us to do. And there was a strong message came back that Learn to Swim was critical and Scottish Swimming needed to take a more proactive role in that, be really clear about our role in Learn to Swim, promoting Learn to Swim, enhancing Learn to Swim. Clubs, of course, were critical to that, and performance was really important. And so we did that consultation, created our new strategic plan. We knew Learn to Swim was important, and it was in the back of that we then started to develop the framework. And the vision for Scottish Swimming around Everyone Can Swim got translated into us talking about how passionate we were, but the importance every child got the opportunity to learn to swim. And from that point, we started to develop, and the whole thing was done again on the back of all the good practice. It was a collection of good practice, people doing a brilliant job at a local level, and collecting that together and putting it together, recognising the importance of giving every child the opportunity to learn to swim.
And you obviously came in after Forbes and working on some of the good work and the good foundations that had been laid through great work throughout the whole of Scotland. How did that come about, and how was that development?
I suppose, first of all, for me, it was quite an interesting place to start, and I thought, what the heck is this? This thing's a huge partnership. Partners that are here with us today, very much a good, strong foundation there for certain, and I think it probably reflects in some of the report we've just had received back from Integratis, those headline figures of the narrative, I think, has grown quite significantly and probably accelerated in the last few years, very much because of the good work that you are all doing in the room. The stories, the factual information that does come back from a variety of different reports is, I suppose, enhanced that narrative. So when it does get to the sort of times we need to stress the importance and value of learning to swim, you can do, whether that be politically or whether that could be just locally and amongst the communities. So a lot of that time and effort, supposed to that period, I think, has just grown from using the good narrative that has been developed over the last little while to promote both the social impacts as much as it is the bare bones safety aspects behind swimming. Ultimately, I suppose the key thing that comes up when you see some of that work is just the fun that everybody can experience, and long may that continue. So that's been, I suppose, the key part of that, is working very much with everybody in this room to share those stories, enhance the opportunities, and to keep that fun and enthusiasm going for everything about water and all the good things it allows you to enjoy in life.
Yeah, and of course that's one of the most important aspects of the framework as well, the enjoyment, and I know that came through in the video from a number of people that were talking there. John, you've come in and it's now, the 10-year anniversary. How good a place is that to come in and see such a thriving network in place? Yeah, thanks Charlie, and great to see everybody today. And it feels a wee bit like I've come on in the 88th minute and we're 2-0 up, sort of thing. Yeah. What's been amazing, and Forbes touched on some of it earlier, and so did Euan as well, is there's so much positive work out there, and the strength of the network, and don't underestimate that. I said this at a networking event earlier in the year with some of the people that are probably in this room today as well, is it doesn't really exist like this across other sports. It doesn't really exist like this anywhere else, where you get that real passion and commitment. More to all is the framework and what that does, but it's your framework, and we'll pull it together, and it genuinely is a partnership with Scottish Water. Scottish Water are critical to this. They give us real credibility. There's not many partnerships you can say you've got a genuine, credible partner that stands with you on everything and does above and beyond what you would ordinarily expect to see, and that's really important to us. So between the three of us, I think, as I said, I've come in almost at the end of the match, so to speak, in terms of the 10 years being done, the great work that Andy has showcased that you've all contributed to. I've just been amazed as I've got into the detail. I've been aware of the framework for a long time, but not actually seen too much of the detail till I come into this role, and just, as Euan touched on, getting out there and meeting some of you, seeing the great work you do, see the passion, the commitment, the joy on the kids' faces, and the contribution that we all make to genuinely keeping people safe and making a positive contribution to people's lives more generally. Touching on that a little bit, John, you mentioned Scottish Water there and some of our other partners and providers as well. Just how vital are the pool operators, the providers and local authorities in turning this ambition and this idea into a national reality? Yeah, I mean, without them it doesn't happen. It really doesn't. Forbes said, at the start of this, he went out and he spoke to all the providers and those that were delivering Learn to Swim, spoke to our community and asked what was important. So the framework and this work's been put together by us on your behalf, but it doesn't work if you don't buy into it and don't help us achieve the outcomes and the ambition that we're trying to work towards. And right from the start, Scottish Water bought into that. I know that they're committed to that vision as much as we are, but it only happens through the commitment, the time, the people here, as well as those that operate the pools, open the buildings, and make those spaces available, because it has to be inviting and welcoming for everybody as well. And Forbes, obviously, as we mentioned already, you were there right at the very beginning of the framework. How important was the kind of early buy-in from a lot of providers and that trust shown in the idea?
It was essential, and I think the success of it, as I said earlier, was down to the fact that the framework was built on the good practice and collecting the good practice that everyone was doing and sharing it. I remember right at the very start, and we had, as we were all doing at that time, I know things have moved on, we all had our 4-year plans. So the plan I talked about consulting on was a new 4-year plan for Scottish swimming. I remember sitting down with the team, and we had a very simple way. We're thinking, okay, we'll work with 6 to 8 local authorities in year 1, and then we'll add on another in year 2, and then we'll add on and so on. And by the end of year 4, we'll have all 32 local authorities, local partnerships. And within about 6 months after the first one of these types of events, we had local authorities across Scotland all wanting to be part of the framework, all wanting to come along to the networking events, all wanting to engage with the Scottish swimming team and the staff. And so the idea of a gradual rollout over a 4-year period was out the window, and we went all in and we took every positive conversation that came to us and followed it up and utilised the full team at Scottish Swimming. So the early adopters were important, but it felt as though everybody wanted to be part of things really quick. It was really interesting actually seeing the numbers up on the slide to see how sometimes rose-tinted specs looking back the way I thought all 32 were on in 2016, but I can see that it's grown over that period. But there was no holding back. We had all providers wanting to come along to these really positive events to share best practice and to learn from each other, and it just snowballed really quickly from there.
And you and your thoughts on that as well, while it was kind of developing and the importance of those relationships.
I'll just say there, following them from Forbes there about some of the numbers that came up on the slides there. I came in 2019, so this is the review. It feels like getting my exam results back today. That's what it looked like today for me, some of that. I suppose that the power of partnerships for me are significantly really important in all my working life from day one, first job, and both John particularly has mentioned Scottish Water, and Scottish Water have been a steadfast supporter of the whole programme, more to the point when I came in I thought, is this a transactional relationship? But far from it, far from it. Way more than that, from the understanding why Scottish Water are involved in it and their whole rambling on here a little bit, but what always struck me is when you hear about the internal messages that come back from the Scottish Water team, when some of the reports and figures and successes that come from the programme are being circulated internally through the internal comms channel, and everybody's getting excited about that internally, never mind what we're able to convey out to the wider public. So that partnership itself has been hugely important, never mind all the partners we have in this room to date. And to your point, Forbes, that whole piece of, have we got all local authority partners on there yet? That was the thing I got from the board for about the last 4 or 5 years on there. We got them on. It's not about whether everybody is able to get on or not. So I suppose it's about, do we have the reach to that everybody in Scotland, every youngster has the opportunity to learn to swim somewhere? I think it's perhaps a more relevant kind of focus should be on that one. But what struck me around the involvement and development of the whole kind of framework has been said many times, and it was in the presentation at the start in the slides, was it's your framework. And what always impressed me, John's touched on it, when you go to the network days, of the willingness and enthusiasm of people to come to these days, because you realise it's yours to develop and grow and shape and challenge, which there's certainly things to move on or develop from. You see those stats up there. But I'll maybe close my wee ramblings here with one thing that struck me in my time was there was only one partner we lost to the framework. They opted to do something different. And I was a little bit dismayed at that, to the point I thought, right, I'm going to go and have a good conversation with the CEO at the time of that area. Very pleasant conversation, who basically said there's nothing wrong with the framework, there's nothing wrong with the quality of the teaching, there's nothing wrong with the support. In fact, there's not really much wrong with it at all, to be honest, but I just fancy doing something different. And I don't know when they'll come back to the framework, but I'm sure they will. And that's as much to do with all the growth and the effort that you all put into it to make it what it is. So I'm sure they'll come back on at some point.
I'm going to ask you another question, Euan, just a brief one, but what moments stand out to you, can be positive or maybe a challenge as well, that have really defined the way that the framework has grown and that you've kind of had to overcome?
I think one that's probably, for ourselves as an organisation at that time, COVID and post-COVID, I can't not mention that. Never mind the interruption it had in everybody else in this room's personal life as much as it was their business operations. But through that particular period, it was a challenging time. But what I took from that is you don't realise what you've got till it isn't there. You can't access it. And that really struck home to me. Was just, it felt like we were standing still. But I would suggest there was a lot of good work done by yourselves in this room to make sure that when we had an opportunity to get back to the swimming again or go back to lesson provisions, you could do that. And the power of the network, and I would suggest stronger than that is the partnerships in this room allow different solutions to be found to how do we get youngsters back to learn to swim quickly. So quickly on the back of that was the challenges that we're all facing, which I will take the opportunity to mention this just now when there's plenty of people and politicians in the room today, and that the cost of learning to swim or the cost of swimming following COVID has proven to be a real challenge and for all, and I think that's something we need to have a good look at trying to address, as much as it is keeping swimming pools open so that those numbers we see on there today can continue to increase. It's been a challenging time, Charlie, some of those particular periods to get through, but hey-ho, there's enthusiasm out there. Parents and youngsters still want to learn to swim, so let's find ways of making it as affordable as we possibly can.
Thanks, Euan. Forbes, taking it back a little bit, what were the kind of initial maybe challenges or things that came up that you felt were really important moments in the development of the framework?
Geez, 10 years ago is quite a bit of time again. I've got the rose-tinted specs on. I saw it as a really positive journey, but probably the biggest challenge was the speed it was all moving at one point. Do you know one of the real successes and key moments along the journey? So as it started from a corporate strategy, the whole team at Scottish Swimming completely bought into every part of it. It's really telling when you watch the videos that Alan's speaking in a lot of those videos. Alan was employed by Scottish Swimming as a national coach. He was there to support Duncan and Tony to go and do their thing. He spent as much time and believed as much in the importance of learning to swim as he did in his job and performance. Ali Wyke, our performance director, through that period of time was the same. So the whole organisation believed in this. This wasn't about, I was looking at the slide about making money, Andy. It was one of the outcomes of making money. I can't remember ever having a conversation about making money about this. This was a whole organisation who believed passionately about ensuring every child had the opportunity to learn to swim. And so that whole organisational approach, I think bringing Duncan and Tony on to the as ambassadors was fantastic. It connected the organisation, it connected our very best athletes to young people learning to swim, and likewise with Scottish Water coming on, it just made that partnership, those local partners, Scottish Water, our ambassadors, the organisation, it felt like a real collective effort, and it felt as though everybody really, really cared about it, and I think that's why it was successful, and I think that's why it'll continue to be successful, because the people here, we really, really care about it. We know the difference it makes when young people learn to swim, the opportunities it creates for their life, and that was probably the standout. The biggest factor was people care about this stuff, and that's important.
Can I maybe just come on that a wee bit to that? Just your point there around the everybody buying into the framework itself, and what really struck me is with one of our partners in the room here today, and with that connection between the learn to swim through to performance and high performance in Scotland is there. It's real. It exists. And we have some of the stars here today we'll hear of from shortly, but that value and belonging and understanding of where learn to swim fits in the wider thing and its importance, the narrative I think comes through when you hear stories of the high performance programme saying no, as athletes we recognise the value of learning to swim. Yes, we have our ambassadors here today, but the programme itself is making decisions around do we give up some of the water time for the learn to swim programme. That is something that says quite a lot to me about the strength of the value and the buy-in to learn to swim. So just thought important to share that bit.
Of course. And John, from the outside looking in, I guess, over the past 10 years, not within Scottish Swimming, but within Sports Scotland and things like that, what's it been like looking at the framework being created and growing? And are there any moments that you kind of register that have been impactful?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch it develop, as you say, and then coming into this role, I think as others, Forbes and Euan have touched on, is that connection piece. And I think what's happening now is it's creating a bit of a change moment for Scottish Swimming is a sport. It's a sports organisation at its core, but it's now becoming more than that. And that's because of the value and the connection of this here, which is the network, whether it's Duncan and Tony, who didn't start off necessarily wanting to be Olympians and Paralympians. They started off with parents or as young people that wanted to learn to swim, and then they've gone on that massive journey. So I think Scottish Swimming itself is evolving and becoming, I guess, more vocal, championing it more, finding its voice in a space that it should be moving into, which is, we are the voice of aquatics. We are your voice as well. You're operators that believe in passionately in what we're trying to do. Scottish Water want to see people safe in and around water, and we believe all of that, as well as having the sport at our heart and our core. And what's been really strong, as Forbes touched on there, is we're actually now getting swimmers talking about it like that. And it's not that they haven't or wouldn't in the past, it's they feel they've now got a place to be able to do that. So it really feels like it's more of a family and everybody's pushing in the same direction for the same thing. I don't hear a conversation where somebody says this isn't important or we shouldn't be doing that, or there's other things that we need to focus on before we start doing this. And that, again, is quite unusual across any of my experience across the sports sector and wider society. Everybody we speak to says this is important, and children, adults that maybe haven't had the opportunity, they should get the opportunity to be safe in and around water and learn to swim where they can.
Are there any other kind of fond memories over the past 10 years? Maybe not anything that's been influential or a massive moment, but just something that's made you smile and think that's what the national framework's all about?
Tons. Brilliant memories over that period of time. And I think back to actually 2018, there was a wee moment in 2018. We did a Learn to Swim symposium. It coincided with the European Championships in Glasgow, and we brought together all partners. We also brought together international delegates. The bit that I'm focusing on is the smile bit. I think after the symposium, I went off to the session, and then I went home that night. And the next day when I came back, and I know there's some people in this room who were out that night, it was probably the biggest coming together of local partners, people involved in Learn to Swim, and it kind of really signified to me that we had got that community of people who really wanted to learn, really wanted to make a difference. We created an environment where they came together and they had a brilliant time and inspired each other. And even when I meet lots of you now, that moment in 2018, it's a smile on the face moment where we just got it absolutely right. We connected performance sport to Learn to Swim. There was an international dimension to it. There was a real connection around our local partners, and it was a great moment. Yeah, really good moment.
And you and yourself?
Like Forbes, there's plenty in there, and I've shared plenty of good experiences, enjoyable ones, with just seeing when you go out and see some of the providers at work. I mean, with Tony and Duncan and Andrew from Scottish Water and the team, they're just seeing their faces as some of the reactions with the kids. But the one that sticks out in my mind every year, and it comes up every year, Scottish Swimming Awards night is a fantastic night, full stop. Anyway, it's entertaining, it's good, it's the right celebration. But what all my fond memories of the framework is just the passion and enthusiasm from framework providers every year. And I used to have to go around with Gordon and the team and have to console those that didn't win. It was such an accolade that everybody wanted as a provider to win the Provider of the Year. And I do think it's something that says a lot about the framework, a lot about the enthusiasm, a lot about the hard work that goes into it and what it means to everybody. And I just really like the reactions you get on that particular evening for that award. I think it's great.
It's always a fantastic award, isn't it? And I think now we try and celebrate the three providers, and it's an amazing achievement to be in the final three. So, John, what about yourself? Any moments that stick out?
Yeah, in the short time, you picked up on one there, because we just had the AGM and the awards dinner there, and I'd been to the swimming AGM and awards dinner in the past, but not for a few years, and it did remind me, because I had to, we're sitting down the front, so we see everybody going on the stage, but it was genuine excitement for that. So that was one, and I look forward to future years when it gets even more exciting. But the piece at the moment is just going round and spending time with Providers of the Year, and in some cases taking politicians round to see some of the programme activities, or spending time with Tony and Duncan as well when they're there, or with Alan and the team at Scottish Swimming when they're out with the providers. It's the joy on the children's faces and the passion from the teachers that are doing the delivery and the pool operators, and just the vibrancy and the laughter in a swimming pool. And that for me, that's something they can go and experience, and it never gets dull, it never gets boring, and I never take it for granted, because it isn't an easy thing to do. But that for me is something that I've seen a lot of, and I hope to continue to see a lot more of that in the years to come.
Obviously, there's some great moments there over the past decade of the framework, and we saw earlier about there's now been over 210,000 children and adults involved in the framework, and it's an incredible number of people. What does the next decade look like, or the next few years, and what are the kind of biggest opportunities and challenges that are coming next, John?
the $60 million question, I suppose. I mean, there's lots of challenges, there's lots of choices, there's a lot of stress just in the public sector more generally, so things are difficult and the environment's challenging, but I think we've got a really good opportunity to push on. We've now got 2 evaluations, so what we've proved, and Andrew's touched on it today when he's talked about the initial evaluation. We'll see more of that when it's released in a few weeks' time, but we've proved this works. We've got European Aquatics here as well. We've got an opportunity to go and present at their conference across Europe early next year as well. So we have a framework and a product and a thing that works, and it works really, really well here in a time that's really challenging when there's lots of competing pressures on money, on resources, on facilities, but this works, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. So I think the future's really positive. It can always be better. We always want to listen and take on board from you what you all say and what you all think about it. But I think we've got a really more than a positive foundation. We've got a real success here, and in Scotland we're not really good at celebrating success and saying we're good at something. We're good at this, and we're doing it really, really well. And I mean that genuinely. Everybody in the room here is contributing and making this happen. As Forbes said, everybody out there does the work. I'm not the person doing the work, but I can see it every single day with every single provider at every single venue. This works. It's a success. Let's celebrate it. We're doing a bit of that today. Let's talk about it, and let's continue to drive it forward so that the next 10 years is even better than the 10 years we've just had.
And Euan?
I think 10 years, we wouldn't have got to this point without the support of you, without the support particularly of Scottish Water. And that has allowed the freedom particularly to develop a whole raft of resources and a narrative, a strong narrative, which John's touched on there, which evidences that this works. The future 10 years for me is about the rising costs we're all facing just now, and the importance of, bluntly, the whole purpose of this is about safety, keeping people safe in and around water. The real thing for me, I think, is making sure that opportunity so people can learn to swim and be safer in and around water or even understand the water safety messages. Partners in the room today, we've got Water Safety Scotland as well. RLSS and RLNLI are important to this work as well, of just making sure people are safe in and around water. So to get those skills early is an important one. So the opportunities, I think, in the next 10 years, what started on there, it's not been mentioned today yet, is the school swimming framework, which sits alongside the Learn to Swim framework. And that's designed particularly to make sure that everybody can get access at a young age and take away the cost barriers. So for me, that would be the area to try and really focus on going forward, to make sure everybody has that opportunity to get to these vital life-saving skills at an early stage without any cost barrier to it. That'd be the thing for me to drive on. The message is there, the evidence is there, the narrative's there, but let's make sure that bit's there. And
Forbes, lastly, from your kind of broader point of view as well.
Listen, I think we need to push on. We need to push on. The progress has been brilliant. The ambition should be even greater and even higher than it's been to date. We should all take inspiration from what's been achieved. I was just thinking in the room today, I know we've got politicians from cross-party, we've got representatives from COSLA here. Some of the work that Scottish Swimming have done to influence in the political arenas, locally and nationally, has been brilliant, because what we need to do is we need to open up other parts, other budget holders, other parts of government locally and nationally to recognise the impact of this. Sports paid for all this so far. Sports budgets are tiny and we've paid to do this so far. And the political influence, the political work that's been done to recognise that the outcomes and the benefits from what happens here goes much broader. So I would say, like, shoot for the stars, be super ambitious, let's not be constrained by things, and when there are challenges come along the way, use the strength of the partnership, strength of the collective to sort them out, move them out the way, and keep shooting for getting to that place where every child learns to swim.
Fantastic. And just lastly, to round off our discussion, hopefully it's been informative and interesting for the audience, but we thought it would be good to ask what the national framework means to each of you in 3 words. Tough question.
Partnership, because that's what we've talked about. Inspiration, because it has been inspirational, and ambition, because we need to grow that ambition and do more and do more.
Euan?
I've got 2 actually, but one I can't get away from the working. It should be everybody can swim, isn't it? So anyway, the one I want to add, and it's not strictly for, is fun. Just add water.
So I would just say motivation, passion, and delivery.
Fantastic. I think that's a nice way to round it off, and some great suggestions there. So thanks very much for joining me, and can we give a round of applause to our panel as well?
Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Aqua Pod. I hope you enjoyed the slightly different episode that we brought you today. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will be another live recording from our 10-year Learn to Swim anniversary. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or leave us a like and a comment on YouTube. Until next time, thank you very much.